Hi, this is Lori with To the Trade, and I have Niall with me. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
It's so exciting today because we have Isabel Jackson from Chelt Interiors. I'm so happy to have you, Isabel. This is so great.
Oh, thanks, Laurie and Niall. It's so lovely to see you both.
And we know you're a friend of our past guest, Mary Douglas Drysdale, who is such a friend to the show. And I've loved her and admired her for years and years. So I'm so excited that you're here. She's a mentor to so many, and I know she
Oh,
works for
yes.
you. It's so exciting.
Yes, indeed. She is really a magical, wonderful mentor to me. And I'm so grateful for any opportunity that I continue to help her out. For example, we have an upcoming showroom, the Stark showroom in the DC Washington Design Center, and we're going to be decorating that space on the 11th for the holiday fete.
Oh, that's so great. I love Stark, so that's a great
Yeah.
I know you two will knock that out of the park.
Easily.
I found this really cool person who's in Richmond, and he did the Montgomery Mall Santa Grotto here, and I met his sister who was on site doing all the schlepping and the Christmas tree decorating, all that. And I said, "Oh, this is so fun, and how wonderful to find a carpenter of this quality, and who is this guy?" And then she connected me, so hopefully Mary will, if anything, if he says he's available, so we'll see if that works out. But we're going to do a big bow, and that's the big difficult part, is to locate this bow. So I've been madly looking online yesterday for this ribbon and bow, and that's the big, wow factor. But I can't wait. Yeah, Christmas is just so fun.
It is. And
Wow.
it's such I have another designer that I chat with, and she really focuses on holiday decorating for her business. And she had told me years ago, and I think it's probably true, that it's such an income generator for a designer. It's kind of a pain to do it if you get into holiday decorating.
It can eat up your whole
It can eat up your whole month, or 2 months, really, because you're taking it down also afterwards.
Yeah.
But the plus side of it is that, and it is a lot of physical work, but once everything is out, like all the holiday decorations are out, typically clients, because it feels more bare, it starts getting them thinking about another remodel or another project, because it just feels so stark after you take all the decorations out.
I know.
And all the, garland. You're like
spring cleaning early.
Yes.
Mm.
I need some changes in here, because it feels dissatisfying to have all of that. Now I'm the opposite. I love it the day the decorations go down. I'm like, thank God I can go back to my normal. I mean, I love it when they're up, but I also love it when it feels like it's cleaner and like there's not all this stuff everywhere. I'm not a
I gravitate towards all of the different ones. So there'll be something in my home to do with like Lunar New Year, with the reds and the golds, and it's fun for my kids too. And I try to make it on the elegant side rather than the more kiddified. But from there you can go, of course, towards Valentine's Day. But on the way you have then there's St. Patrick's Day, and then you have all the different holidays
in between. Decorate for every holiday?
Not fully. It depends. It's sometimes partial, like the mantle, the entryway, or the wreath, or the exterior porch. But a little something for each feeling. Oh, the one I missed was in January, the white snowy, Mr. Snowman, but elegant, with the whites.
Well,
that was where I was going. So it's sort of in my brain, there's like, when I'm bringing something down, something else is going to come up, so there's always something to look forward to, and it just sparks joy in everybody that comes in.
I wish I was very in that mood. I'm like, this year we're doing a family trip to Vegas, which is not me. Ask anybody. I am like, I hate Vegas. I am not a Vegas person at all. I go for work mostly. I have to go for work a lot, but I don't enjoy it there. But our kids are older, and we thought it'd be fun. They would have fun with the restaurants and the shows and
and the little Venice and the little Paris, and it's like traveling in the world in one place.
Yes, so we're going there a few days after Christmas. So I'm just thinking, like, why decorate all?
But you can see the Cirque du Soleil there. That's amazing.
Yeah. The Sphere has a Wizard of Oz that I'm gonna probably go do. And my kids, and my husband has been for a lot, many times, but the kids have never been. So it'll be kind of fun to take them. They're
nice.
21, so they can go live it up.
Easy travel buddies.
Yeah. I'm assuming we will go to bed and they will hit the clubs.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Yeah, my oldest is 10, so I'm in the thick of it. I had kids late because I'm 47, but I do think to myself sometimes, roll on 10 years where I can be like that, you know?
I was an empty nester for a year, but one of our kids had a breakup and she just moved home. And then the other one is like, I'm getting sick of living out here in the streets, so I want to move home too. So now we're not going to be empty nest. We're going back into the nest.
Wow.
Reverse empty nest for a minute.
They fly. You have to help in the nest. Then they'll fly away, and then they might come back. Yeah. The nest is sort of like, you have to, help their wounds and say, come on, and then off you
can go out. Yeah. So you do, obviously, coming from the UK, British influenced design and really bring in luxury. How has that shaped your business, and where did it all start for you?
Well, I think it started as a young child. I was practically raised before I was 7 and sent to boarding school, which was very early. But I was raised for a number of years by my nana, I called her, which is my grandmother on my mother's side. And she was an absolutely wonderfully creative force. And I spent so many hours with her. She was living on her own because her then boyfriend had passed away. And so she used to work in Wedgwood, and she used to have so many talents like scrapbooking and dolls housing and you name it, tapestry and stamp collecting. And we would put old photographs of our ancestors, these black and white things, and I'd label them in the photo albums. So there was this wonderfully creative, and with my hands, you can see I lived in Italy. I use my hands a lot. And I'm a busy bee, busy Izzy. And so that really was the first, foray of, I did watch some TV, but in our free time, we would do other things, reading and playing with the doll's house. And like many, of my ilk and my age and so on, we just had a lot of free time, and we would explore different media, painting, drawing. And she used to draw fashion models, and she was really very good at drawing. So that was a first impetus early on. And then as I grew, I saw my mother flipping homes because my father was building an airline, which was really very stressful because he was a pilot for 10 years. And then he was very much wanting more than just sort of the bus driver in the sky type of thing. And so he went and did an MBA, which was a new thing back then in the 80s. And so I was a young child, and we were living right by the campus of this place, this MBA. And I could just see that he bought our home, and he stripped it all the way back to the studs. And he used an airline manual because he had known from the airplane how to strip that down to the basics. So he used that approach to his home. And my mother, my brother, we were all on this building site essentially, and those famous stories, where my brother fell down the wood stairs, the framing, and and he caught him by the Wellington boot, and this kind of thing. So we grew up, really, sort of in the thick of it with that project. And then that was my first sort of like memories, with Nana, and then that going on. And then later on, seeing my mother flip homes, she would then, with the stress of the business, I was sent to boarding school, because their marriage suffered. And she then started with Nana telling her, you really must do something for yourself and use your skills with the home and your creativity, and passed on by me, and I can be there to support. And so she started to build her flipping business, living in the property that she owned, which was very stressful because it's like living in a show home. So I try with my kids not to live that stressfully. But she then moved constantly. I mean, every time I would come home from boarding school, every year at least, she would move home, every couple of years, 1 or 2 years. And these are cottages in the Cotswolds near Cheltenham, where I'm from. So my business is called Chelsea Interiors, because that's my origin story. And my name Isy is just Isy, because in boarding school, my friends, we didn't know how to spell it. Isy. And so he is Isy with a Y. That's your name. And so all these things happened to me when I was young, and that sort of got me going in the creative direction from the people I was surrounded by. My uncle, also my mother's younger brother, escaped England because he was bullied for being gay, which was ridiculous. And he went to New York, and he's a very successful, with his architect partner, project manager of 25 properties between them. So I've always had people around me that are sort of influencing me softly in my family. And that's sort of where I get the creative impetus from early on.
That's very common. We interview a lot of designers, and you would be surprised how many started out with this creative mind from a young age, and how it shaped them, and usually also a loved one that they're either adjacent career or directly in interior design made it so it seemed like it was possible. Because I think a lot of people don't recognize that this is a career that you could be. Just do it. I think that it takes some sort of connection to it to make it seem like it's doable.
Yeah.
Normally
someone is a relative of, say, a carpenter, and in fact, my stepfather, he then came into my life when I was a young, teen, very young teen. And he was a master tiler he had Cotswolds Tiling Solutions. And before that, he worked for Garrard's, which was in the crystal department of Garrard's, was originally the Queen's jewelers. So they did mostly crystal, jewelry, but then they sparked off into the home and did crystal. And so he was learning very early on, and he traveled to the Middle East. And so he also could draw brilliantly, very, very much more architectural style drawings, which was a different thing to seeing Nana's fashion, sketches of skinny women and so on. But it was just this ability to draw, which I really respect still. And I feel that that's, somebody like Mary, who will go with their clients and getting out the vellum and just sketching very loosely. I think that still is so impressive. I mean,
I'm always
I love that.
By it. And so many designers have completely lost that. I mean, I was at an event one time where they did had a perspective drawing teacher. And it was a room full of designers. You should have heard the groans.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of groaning.
This guy, I know, this guy who taught me sketching at GW, because then I moved here years later, 15 years ago. And then that was the moment where I said, I'm going to just do this. Because I was already looking at schools in London. And then my husband's from here, which was how I then thought, I'll look up schools in Washington, D.C. And, George Washington, I know him. And then, that's where that came from. But the teacher there, he was amazing. He has a book, and he teaches at the University of Maryland, and he's really very skillful. And I just love how they have the techniques of the perspectives and the axonometric and the drawing. It's like he's born with this thing. He's from Puerto Rico, and he just was born with this talent, and then worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And I just love to see people that can draw. It's just such a talent.
Yes, absolutely. Even really great on like digital drawings too, like people who can do it fast, efficiently, render
anything. It's that loose
parts of it that it's all talent. It's all talent to be able to do that. And I know we just put together a list because we had Sharon Sherman, who is on our board. She does a lot of teaching about regular and interior designers who haven't tackled kitchen and bath design, how to do that. And we had to put together a list of designers who were willing to do drawing for other designers as a means of an extra income.
Nice.
I was surprised and shocked how many designers were like, give me that list.
Oh, that is so cool.
Which is great. It's like helping each other, getting designers to help one another. I mean, I'm all about it. So it was really,
Yeah. I noticed in the White House, they had this fashion designer come in, but he had such a good I forget his name. It's something French. There's four names, but he just went to Mrs. Melania and did all these drawings, which I was like, wow. Because like on his social media, it just shows his skinny model sketches. So I just found it so fascinating how she obviously worked with him through the fashion and her dressing and all. But I just found it so interesting how he went to the White House and was able to, of course, do all the trim and all the beautiful, bows and all the Christmas, all through drawing. And I thought, wow, this is an old school guy. How cool is that?
I love that. I love that. And it's so true that like connections lead from one place to the other.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, like when you do meet a new client for the first time or a new potential client, what are some of the things that you are seeking to learn about them that you can bring your idea of design to them? Like how do you work that in your system?
Well, I think I'd like to understand who they are and what they kind of stand for and what they like in their look and in their lifestyle, because ideally the lifestyle of the sort of more elderly client who doesn't have kids, and that's a lot easier for them to explore things that are just not kidified. I mean, because sometimes you have to, when you're designing with kids, it's just, or dogs, the ideal client, I think, is somebody who is more on the older side, and then they appreciate history, and they have an affinity for antiques or just travel. It doesn't have to be traditional either. It can also be similar to Mary, the fact that she can work with different aesthetics. I think that's super addictive in a way. It's like after I do one flip home, I want to do another one. It's like that whole drug of, oh, well, I've done this aesthetic. I would like to try this, So I have done different aesthetics, and that's appealing. It's more about, well, I don't want to rinse and repeat this kind of thing, but what are you standing for that's unique in your aesthetic or your interests? Or say there's something new, like, oh, golf. I've never done a golf, then I could think, oh, Ralph Lauren golf, and I could go off on a thing. But it has to be them. I have to sit back and listen and get out of them a few nuggets of what they kind of want to achieve. It takes time. You can't rush the judgment of who they are, and you have to get to know them a bit. First consultation is always a little bit like, well, I don't know, but I can think about it and come back to you.
Yes. But I would say, even though you work on different styles, you kind of always seem to, in your work, based on your profile, blend a little bit of historic period with contemporary.
Wanderlust.
Always trying to bring in that history. Is that a part of the UK sensibility, or is that something that you find in your area? How are you blending that?
If it's a traditional home, I'm obviously looking at the exterior and then trying to understand a good flow, because the exterior often dictates the interior. There are, in Italy, for example, traditional facades where you have inside a very contemporary apartment, but the high ceilings, or in Paris, these kinds of traditional boxes filled with modern furniture, that works very successfully. But I think it depends, it depends on the person. And I'm trying to bring in a little bit of history or travel, at least, even if it's coastal but having something old, like some old lamps in with the shells, or it does give a sort of a different upscale look, I feel.
Yeah, I would think so too. We actually get a surprising amount of questions sometimes that come into the community about sourcing antiques. I think all of our listeners are probably pretty interested.
Oh, that's one of my passions.
How are you out there servicing those types of clients? Are there any special sources? Do you do any trips to?
Well, to give my secrets away, I'm okay to do that, because I believe in sharing, and this is a community. Whoever's hearing this is my peer, and I think with antiques there are different avenues to go down to source them. There are things like estate sales where you can find, it's a bit of a needle in a haystack, or there are stores in Georgetown. So when I worked with Kelly Proxmire, she would often go shopping, for the for the right pieces. But first of all, you want to look at what they already have, because that's what she would do. She would basically go in, and Mary too, they would go in there and they would be like, yes, no, yes, no. But one has to be very careful, because before you go there, you have to understand what's sentimental, and you never want to offend. And so the key is to understand what is for you really sentimental and must stay, and then, oh God, I've got to work around this thing, and those are the most important things to discover early on, say in those meetings when you're touring their home. Remind them as you go around, what do you really love and want to keep, and what's kind of, and what's that can be replaced. Understand in each room those aspects. That's the first step. The second step is, of course, then showing them the pieces through images, and you can go shopping on websites, First Dibs, Cherish, all of that. But shopping online is very hard. I do prefer to go looking in an antique store, and then store you have more time to share the photo. But if you're going to do an auction, for example, that's a whole nother animal. And Mary's done super high level auctions, and then I've done more local ones like Sloan and Kenyon's, Weschler's, Quinns. Those are my three here, and that's a fun sort of game. But with that, you want to look at what's coming up. You want to get them to send you the information. You can look up online what all the pieces are, and then you can decide, oh, I love that, I love that, love that. And then you sort of show the client your shopping list, and then you have to understand the bidding process, because
and probably have prices agreed upon.
It's a bit of on the day. Look, what's your max?
I would guess, yeah.
So you have to find from the client what would be your max, because you always want to bid half of the low, because there'll be the lowest price and the highest, and you want to do half of that to get a deal, to snag that piece. But more often than not, the starting bid might be that low, and therefore you want to see when it's online bidding, it can get very exciting, because you can get auction fever, and you'd be like, I'm going to go up and up and up and buy the bloody thing at the top of the range, that it's supposed to be. So there's all of these tricks, auctions, estate sales, stores, of course, going to England. I mean, I have a friend that has a store in Georgetown, and she's doing that right now. She's in England getting a whole container to Baltimore, and she offloads it in her store over a few months, and she's doing very well. So there are people still that are just in love with the old world and rummaging around antiques shops, and it's fun. Go to Frederick near here, and it's loaded with antiques. So there's all these sort of sources that one in the know knows who's who, and it really is a community. It's really fun.
It is. And I mean, it must be very exciting to, get those bids in and figure out like this piece that would be really, I mean, at that point, it's sort of almost a one of a kind still, because it still exists in the world, and there's just these right pieces, and they add such a sense of place in a home. I love antiques myself, and I'm a big fan.
Good.
We have a lot in New Hampshire, so we
I
do
know
that. And I have, Nyla has been on antiques trips in Italy, and there's all
how wonderful.
It's wonderful to bring that in.
Yeah.
Do you ever have are the clients asking for it? Are you, because they're working with someone like you, or are you presenting that to them as an option, or they work with you that antiques will be part of it?
I mean, ideally that would be the case, where they would come to me each time, because they know that that's my signature style. But at the moment, my business is relatively young versus some of the other people that you've been talking to. Jenny the other day, she was 25 years into her business. So, I'm 10, but, the last couple of years is when I've actually had a lot of work to show, and I got out there marketing. So it's always like, the prospecting of clients, it's like fishing, you're like, oh, I got a big fish here. Oh, I got a few minnows, but,
Yeah.
That's the whole, it's
part
an
of
up and down, the
building
creative world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
have you ever had to work in anything that you didn't want to work in for clients? I love that you asked that what they
Yes.
about.
sometimes there's these sort of DIYers, and if I have time and I'm not working with Mary, I mean, the Mary book is sort of an ongoing thing, but that's going to be helping her a couple of hours each week. Nothing onerous. But there's all these different projects, of course, marketing myself. I've hired a PR person until the end of February, again, to help me kind of get out there. And I've got a number of podcasts and a couple of TV things going on locally. So that managing all these different projects and the client, I have one client and then I have a new one, which is it's a DIY-ish kind of thing. But I was like, I'll do it in January, February. So I try to just stay busy, but then I would, if it's not good, sort of, then I'll refer it to other designers and so on. Because when I deliver something similar to Mary, I mean, I keep going Mary, but it's about delivering excellence, and what you take on, you're to the word and you're very loyal. Yes. So therefore, when you're fully booked, you kind of don't want to, because we're just sole-owned proprietors here. Mary does the same thing. Kelly Proxmire did. She's not as active anymore, but that's, at best they'll have one assistant, or a bookkeeper. These days you can get that remotely. And then I have a marketing person remotely. I have my drafts person in India. So having all that overhead is really very stressful for somebody like me, who's also a mother of 3 young children and has that work-life balance. So therefore, what I take on, I try and deliver to the max. But, that's sort of my motto, is do something well or don't do it at all.
That is really great. And I probably something that every listener should pay attention to. We get a lot of conversation in our community, particularly on Instagram, about red flags and avoiding the wrong type of client that can just
totally
really tank your business in some ways, because it takes
for tiny weeny things or just itty bitty that you can't photograph. The ideal project, of course, is something more cohesive, a few rooms, like I've got one coming up in the early January or something. And thankfully, over time, I've done her laundry room. And for me, it takes time. It's a process. I'm not in there for the quick win. Unless they're super busy and they have a deadline, of course, I will. But so far, most of my relationships have been more of this sort of slow, gradual, come back, which is really pleasant, because then you have this repeat,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the referrals. And I mean, it's a small world where I am. I'm not working in multiple cities or whatever. I'm working remotely in that fashion, but the clients generally are local. I'd like to get more over at the beach near where Nile is.
Oh, good.
Ocean City, Rehoboth, all of that. With time, because I tend to spend my summers over that way. So it would be nice to get a few, even if it was a rental spruce up. I mean, I don't see why not. Just as long as it looks good.
Don't your parents?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
No, my parents are in Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Billy's parents are.
Billy's.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah. That is really, that's a great area. I drove through there a few years ago. I was going to Virginia, and I drove through there. It's beautiful. It's really busy though. So busy.
It's incredible. Yeah, they're in Lewis, which is nice, because it's like it neighbors Rehoboth. So when they go home, they live right on the bay, so it's nice. So it's 2 minutes into Rehoboth, so they can get all of that when they want. But then they're back home in Lewis, Lewis Beach area, which is nice. It's a little quieter, a little more calmed down. Yeah.
I like quieter. Here,
me too.
We have Hampton Beach, which is
which I used to go to every summer.
Yeah. And then, like, a little bit down the road is Rye, and Rye is my favorite.
Love it.
I'm a chill person. I don't want a million people next to me when I'm at the beach.
Yeah. So I find living here in the DMV, it's very frantic with super type A people around me. And I find that the summer is really nice to do the Italian thing, where they sort of, because Italy is such a long boot, there's so much coast that they all gravitate towards the coast, whether it's the Adriatic or the Mediterranean. And I find that coming here, I am so blessed to be in Maryland, because 3 hours drive door to door, I can be over in the beach, in the ocean there. So, I mean, it's a very whooshy ocean. It's not a calm sea. But, I just feel that it's very replenishing to take a couple of months and calm down and kind of, obviously I've got the kids home and all of that drives it. But eventually, I'm sending my 10-year-old up to Minnesota every summer. He just started to do a month camp, because I was boarding school. Oh, you can hack it. Go up to and then I can have that month to eventually, in 5 years, when the 5-year-old becomes 10 and can do all that, I can then have that month to go on vacation with my husband somewhere nice in Europe for 2 weeks. Then, he's slaving away in his tech job, so he'll probably have to be remote, whatever. But then I'll have 2 weeks to myself. Or I could perhaps get involved in a show home somewhere. I'll have my life back to some extent. And that's what I'm sort of looking forward to in the next 5 years, 7 years.
Oh, my goodness. I mean,
and I can go antiquing.
Niall is in the thick of it with little kids, so he gets it.
I completely
100%.
understand. Oh my God, I understand. Totally. Yeah.
I think it will happen. One has to enjoy and seize the moment. Carpe diem,
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard. I think that's something that's overlooked in our industry is what we do is so time intensive, and it can be so emotionally difficult to do a design project. And one of the things, I read something about the difference between when you're stressed out versus overwhelm. And stress is something that is manageable and it's a little bit temporary, and overwhelm is like the only cure for overwhelm is nothingness.
Nothing.
That is 100% doing nothing. And that is really what we forget about. Our part of our creative juices have to be replenished, and we have to do nothing in order to get it back and to feel
recharge the batteries.
Yes,
indeed.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's very overlooked in our industry where we're always servicing others. I wonder if it's because it's a women-dominated industry, and that so much of it is in childcare, that even when you're off, you're also on being a mother and taking care of other people, and so
it's strange.
Something that we have to really consider and think about, because now my kids are older, I can retrospectively think about how much of my life was in service to others, and how hard that is to maintain a creative career.
Definitely.
When you're servicing other people, little people as well as your clients.
Yeah.
It really can. And it's not that you don't love being a parent is a great joy, but it's also the mental load of it and the task list that's constant of this person needs this, and this right now has to be probably one of the most stressful times for an interior design business if you have young children, because you're planning the holiday, you're planning your husband's efforts with the holiday, you're planning meals, you're planning parties, you're planning all of the school activities that happen during this time, and also trying to maintain a business.
I know. I can't believe in 3 weeks the kids are back in the house, over that period, and it's just
over the whole holiday. So you're like, how am I going to get that done?
It's a constant battle.
Yeah, and Niall can relate. It's a struggle to do that, and I think that we need to make sure that if you're out there and you are listening to this, you might want to have your partner come into the room right now and listen, because it's so important that the partners of creatives during this time, especially if you have an interior design business, recognize how stressful this time is for your partner as they give to literally everyone, and supporting them as much as you possibly can through this time frame from now until January 15th. If your partner is in the interior design business, be helpful.
It's like our tax season for accountants.
What accountants, do you mean, my love?
Accountants have April the 15th deadline, and we have, Christmas Day.
Yes.
Or Hanukkah. Exactly. Hanukkah too. All these holidays are wonderful. Kwanzaa. There's just so much to be thankful for. But yes, that's our busy time as decorators and designers, because inevitably there will be people thinking about those spaces in their homes.
Sure. If they're having guests, I want it done by Christmas.
Yeah, because the public spaces in their home are definitely the ones where they're entertaining. Some people don't entertain. And again, in that early getting to know them, you'll understand that what do you want your public and private spaces to look like? Do you want the private to be a sanctuary and the public to be a representation of your best self. So there's that, in the entertainment of your home, which spaces to define those and how do you want those to feel. And certainly that's, all the holidays one thinks, and then one can ask them, which holidays do you celebrate and how do you decorate for them? And so therefore you will have spaces for the tree, and
I love that. I love that
That's
concept,
really
because let's just
smart.
say
I love that.
I do too, because that is a really great tip for if you're listening. So one of the things you could do is mark all of that down in your calendar to reach out to that person. If you're designing for them in June and they say, we really go hard for Christmas, you mark down that you're going to contact them in September and you're going to offer some services for helping them decorate. And that's a great tip,
At least for someone of my level, where I'm mostly charging on the hourly,
Yeah.
I don't have retainers at this stage in the game. I know how they work through Kelly and Mary. But, mine is an hourly and a billable thing, so that mostly I can track that and I can give value frequently. Every week or 2 weeks, they'll be getting the bill and they'll know and keep up with what they're buying, because when you're in sales, which is ultimately what we are, we have to be able to bill and define what the value is that we're bringing. And by doing it hourly and then splitting the margins, that makes it a bit easier to kind of just be like, well, if you want just the decorating, this is my hourly rate, and I estimate these hours, and this is kind of where, and then you will buy all the gear yourself. But here's a list of what I think, having seen your home. And that's sort of the way to do the decorating piece.
How do you approach the pricing in terms of margins and trade pricing? Are you
splitting my margins at this point? I don't add. I know that in the future it's going to be much easier to add 30% on everything, but I don't feel I'm there yet in my sort of business stage. Right. So I split. It's a lot of more work when you split the margins, but that's where I am able to. I learned that from another designer, Duval Reynolds, and he does that approach, and it's done very well for him. There are others later on, one can Mary and others. One adds, be it 30% or whatever, but that's really easy then for accounting. So that's my approach. It's just at the moment I have to show them, look, you can always get less than retail, but of course, it depends on the vendors. I sort of put it on there. What are they extending to me? And then I'll split that difference, and normally you'll be paying X amount less than retail. So that's how I have learned over the years to handle it. But it's not necessarily a tried and tested recipe for others. I'm open to hearing what works for others at this stage in where they are with their business, which is relatively young,
Yeah.
I don't
in your area,
that I've got all the answers.
Absolutely. In your area, are you dealing with people who have political careers a bit? Are they talking about tariffs? Is that part of the conversation?
Yes.
Yeah, I would assume
lots of people and vendors here in the Washington Design Center are all a bit scrambling, and I approach politics, which my dad always says it's a loser's game, so I don't even get involved in where I stand on the spectrum, because frankly I come from England and that's my excuse. I don't know any better, and I am in the middle, a sort of safe ground. So because you would alienate. I know a lot of designers that are super political, but they have alienated a lot of people, and that's their choice. And that if that rolls for them, great. But for someone like me who's starting out, one needs to stick to the knitting, stick to the decorating, and not get political. And therefore, we're here to bring joy and focus on the positives. And how can I help? That's sort of. And Mary always used to say, "Oh, I love how you're so service friendly," and you always say, "Oh, how can I help?" But that's the way to be a good consultant and a good, you got to deliver, and you got to be always at their disposal, somewhat without being, eating humble pie. But you do have to, at an elevated level, be of good service and approachable.
It is a customer service.
It's luxury, but accessible. And the accessible bit is me. The luxury is what I'm selling.
Right.
But they do, there's a balance. With politics, I stay far clear a bit. So I'm not put off if they're raging whichever direction. I think that everybody, and I have all kinds of colorful people in my family. I even have a trans person. It's not, for me, it's about the individual, and I want to understand them and what they stand for. And creativity is about embracing difference. And that's where I feel very strongly about just everybody. I speak multiple languages too. I speak Spanish, Italian, thanks to my interesting background when I lived in Italy for 10 years. And, I absorbed all these cultures. And my father told me from a young age, just talk to anyone, even the cleaner, get involved with being so interested in the human, who's in front of you, and just chat with them on a easygoing level. And it will open so many doors, and languages open so many doors. And in fact, my Spanish, having come here, was nothing when I moved here 15 years ago. But now I'm absolutely bilingual, thanks to the base of my Italian. But I do find it difficult when people here in America, they don't necessarily learn languages to the same degree because they don't travel in the same way as we're in London. We can get to Italy in an hour, France.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but that's true.
Like the Spanish-speaking people that come here don't necessarily talk as much with the American folks. So there's a bit of a separation there, and I find that I try to bridge that gap, like with contractors.
I was going to ask that next. I mean,
it's really useful.
That is very useful in trade
vendors,
vendors.
Tile from Spain.
Yes.
Having languages, I highly recommend. Nowadays, of course, we've got AI and these goggles or whatever they are with the translation that are coming down the line, and that will help. But they're slightly robotic. I feel like there's no excuse to learn a language with the Babbel or whatever you're using. Keep pushing yourself to learn languages, reading, which has become a wasteland. Libraries are dying, and it's just terribly sad. The academia is telling us, get off these phones and open a book. There's just so much out there that everything's so fast and crazy, and one needs to sort of wind back to when we were young, where things were books, and simplicity.
I love reading. I'm still a reader. I read every day. So
yeah, the old world is where I live, and I feel strongly that that's where we need to remember. With all these wonderful tech, there's a balance.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan. Any way you can read too. If you are listening to a book, that's fine. I do everything. I'll read a physical book. I'll read on a Kindle, and I'll listen to books.
Oh, wow.
Audio. I'm like,
that's great.
I'll do all of them at the same. I'll have 4 books going at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, my 10-year-old has a Kindle, and it's wonderful because you can make the Kindle have the low light levels, so that your circadian rhythms at night are not getting affected by these bright lights from screens. And the Kindle is a wonderful thing because it's so not a big fat book that you have to carry around.
Yes. And you don't need the light on in the room. Yeah. You're not disturbing your partner.
It's like being with a paper.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. I really enjoy our Kindle. I will say my consumption of physical books has gone down because of Kindle. I mean, I read a lot on Kindle because it's just so instant satisfaction. I get the book whenever I want.
Yeah, but I think that's the equivalent of a book. That's the only exception when you talk about devices, because it looks like paper and because of the low light levels, it's actually better than having a lamp on.
Yes.
Shining onto your book. It's got, and it can do the letters.
It's heavy. It doesn't have dust mites or anything.
It can make the page go dark and then the letters are light, the light bits, which I found was really innovative.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. My husband is an Apple Mac guy, and for years he tried to early on with iPads, wanted me to use an iPad, and I literally went out and bought a Kindle instead because I preferred the Kindle. And I still do. And it's because even outside you can read. You can't really read an iPad outside in the sun. It doesn't work as well as reading and it gets overheated really fast.
Yeah.
So I love a Kindle. So how are you helping your clients set priorities? Like when you do have that total budget and you're saying, I really want you to spend on this. Usually it's those basics first, like if they need a new sofa, if they need new beds, if they need whatever. But then you have these special pieces you want them to have a budget for. How do you help them set their budget and priorities when you're when you're trying to incorporate?
Right. So since I've done some flip homes, I've managed the budget in an Excel spreadsheet for those. And so in a similar way, I will set up a spreadsheet of by room, in their home, and the same approach for the flips. It's by room, and you start with the sort of the bare box idea, like a canvas, and then you sort of drill in down to the furniture. So when you think of a canvas and the artist, you start with the canvas, how much is that? Then the paint, how much is that? And then the sort of, fancy bits, glitter or whatever you're going to do. Those are the styling elements. So that's how I would approach the budget, is just break it down into by room. And then over time, that living document we're always using it when we're with the client, because it starts off as a guesstimate, because you have, each item you don't have the quote for. Say it's labor, you've got the labor, and then you've got the piece, the materials, and then the actual pieces if they're freestanding objects. So when it's custom, you get the quote, and then that starts to grow your budget in different ways and pull it. But you basically, with special pieces, you will be allocating, so say a painting, you don't know what it is yet, but you will allocate like a range. And over time, that range will start to become tighter based on things that are shuffling around. So you'll have a budget by room evolving, and it's like a constant living document, which, I worked with this woman who was super financial in Chevy Chase here, and she absolutely wanted this budget, and she was very impressed with it. But I was so glad to produce that and have that, and that was where that kind of came from, that learning of, I always have to have the numbers, because if you can't talk numbers, then you're not very impressive.
Yes.
It's true. They need that at all levels. Anyone who's intelligent, they're going to need it.
I think that is the real factor. And I think it's a missing component of our world, is that it's very difficult for any client to go on any interior designer's website and have any idea of what anything costs. And so, and I'm not picking on anyone in specific. Yeah. Like our whole industry has that issue.
Yeah. So I have an investment
how do we
guide.
Them to know like what things
So I have an investment guide, which is almost like a brochure, and it has
I love that.
broken down by room, and it has ranges, low, medium, and high. Because if you're dealing with, say, Mary's clients, they're going to be in the high range for that sofa, X amount, and then you think about the vendors that would be associated to that high level product. Then there's the medium level budget for some clients, and then there's the Wayfair and the reasonable sort of Amazon and so on, which are the lower end tiers. And then you have to think about, if it's a sofa, you want them to sit on it, so you don't want to buy it online. You want to take them to whichever retail stores. For me, traditional ones would be Ballard, in Tyson's, or I have and modern, it would be Modern and Contempo. I have my relationships already. So I sort of have mapped out over these 15 years, who are the tradespeople that I like and are my favorites, who are the backups in case, and contractors the same, and vendors. The Washington Design Center is absolutely critical to know as many people in there as you can. They're a wonderful resource. They're very kind. They give you samples, and it's just an amazing resource here, which I can get on the metro for 20 minutes. So for designers that are not near a city that have that as a resource, that's challenging, because they're doing everything by mail, and then it's a little bit hit and miss when you're ordering samples online, which I still do, of course. Many, especially fabric, I'm ordering all kinds of samples and then honing in, and then the rest just get chucked in my library downstairs. And I have by color, I have it all sorted, like what I learned from Kelly Proxmire. Whereas Mary, she doesn't keep any stuff it's funny how different people do different things. She'll immediately send all these extras back, which is really great from a sustainability point of view, and less burden on her home. But I'm my personality is more of a keeping things, it's just the old world, and I'll make a library, and I like books. And it's traditionally very English to have dogs and books in your home. And, so I sort of live by that ethos of, I sort of drifted off into a few different tangents here, but.
No, I love that. I love that. That's
sort of
really
my role.
It's adding a layer that is, that makes a home feel livable. And lived in, you know? I mean, I think that's a real fear for a lot of clients when they think of interior design, they think it's going to be overly produced, not personal, not representing them, and that couldn't be further from truth from any designer I've ever talked to. Like, they all want to look like that person lived there and you know, represents them and feels like true home to them. They don't want it to be a magazine cover.
No. That's the beauty of British interiors, is that you should feel as though you almost just left the room, but not in a bad way where it's messy. But there should be one or two, you know, a little bit of a leather that's slightly worn on your comfortable chair, or a dog there, you know. It should feel comfortable, lived in, you know?
Lived in.
Yes, yeah. I love that. One last question, because I just think from talking to you, I think you might have a specific point of view that I think would be very helpful to our audience, is how do you handle conflicts or negotiation? Because it seems like you personally have a very, just listening to you, you have a very calm demeanor. And I'm sure you handle those stressful moments in ways that I think some of our audience could benefit from.
Yeah.
How are you when you deal with someone where the client has a conflict, or a trades partner has a conflict, or a vendor has a conflict? How do you work through that in a way where you're not bringing it in internally, stressing yourself out, but you're also not heightening the conflict with others? How do you work on that?
So the key to any relationship is good communication, and that goes for my husband, my friends, my family. My personality, I'm a Leo, so generally if I'm upset with someone, I will basically get it over with and have it out, and then I never hold a grudge and move on. That's the way I am. But when it's other clients, they have all different personalities, and how they handle difficult or stressful situations, it depends on their personality type. So part of the understanding who they are is understanding that part of them and how they are under pressure. And therefore you can build, I mean, you can even do personality tests on them. There's plenty of those.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I recommend it, actually. I think it's really important.
Some high-level designers have talked about that and do that in their companies when they have multiple employees, and that's part of their process, which I found really interesting, because it will help you in those times. But communication should cover, depending on all the different stakeholders, if there are contractors, number one stakeholder is always the client. And no matter what, you're, again, this sort of like butler mentality of, oh, I'll make it work. But there are times when, you know, you need to set yourself up with your contract. And I've learned the hard way, you know, that you need to constantly be adjusting your process when things happen, because the nature of what we do and consulting in general, there are curveballs, and it's how you handle those, and you don't have the client disengage from you. And going through these stressful times is really it can make you lose sleep at night, but you do have to be on when you're on and in front of those cameras, and you know, sort of when you're with the client, and you do have to be so tactful and gentle and listen, and then be firm a bit. But, you know, it depends, because there are times where you don't want to lose the project and you might want to eat the cost at my stage in the game, but it's usually my own fault because my contract hasn't covered that, you see. And so there's a dance where you want to finish, say you've done multiple rooms and this is the last glitch, you know, what's the cost of eating it? When it's custom, you really have to get them, and Mary taught me this, to sign off on the CFA fabric, or they have to sign before that thing is made. If it's custom, if it's a freestanding thing, I'm generally of the opinion, I can resell that or cope with it and remove it. If it's a massive couch, I will have them sit on it for that very reason, that I don't want it ending up in my home or getting rid of it, because I will never sell it at that retail price. It'll always be, it's like a car. When you put the key in the ignition, immediately it's half the value. 5 seconds into it. So those are the times where you want to make the call. Is this worth the relationship or not? But at my stage in the game, and because I want to deliver on everything and work through any different and keep this client, then I'll just go the extra mile to talk to all the different parties and do my best to be this sort of I used to work in the UN. That was my first job when I came to Italy after I graduated. And I did witness for 5 years. I was there, witnessing this level of negotiation between, I was writing letters on behalf of the World Food Programme CEO. We were writing letters when disasters would happen. We were the communications mouthpiece. I did witness how they were handling it in these letters when things would happen with other agencies. We would have to, and it's teamwork. The same happens here. We're a team of architects, contractors, it's tradespeople, specialists, and if it's this one person, like the tradesperson or the vendor, you have to walk on eggshells and do everything you can to make the client happy, because it's the client that's the ultimate god,
Yeah. Yes. Well, I could sense that you have that superpower. You really do. And being able to navigate those difficult situations.
If you're a consultant in any business, you do have to just try and work through the difficult moments and get it sorted quickly.
Agree. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm sure our listeners are really going to be excited and make sure that they follow you everywhere. We're going to make sure that your information is all over our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Laurie and Niall.
Have a happy holiday.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy holidays. Yeah.
Bye-bye.